It is a land of paradoxes where the cosmopolitan meet the local, where slums of poverty overlook some of the most beautiful landscapes in the world, and where the ageless Maya culture thrives in full splendor amongst an ever-changing society. Welcome to Guatemala. I am Benji. During March of 2009, me and my brothers Jason and Justin and our friends Janice and Ping traveled to this enchanting land where we mingled with Mayans, climbed an active volcano, and learned how there's always space for one more passenger on a chicken bus. Let me share with you our journey. Our first stop is Guatemala City, or as locals call it, Guate. It is an urban conglomeration of 7 million people in the largest metropolitan area in Central America. It is not the most pleasant place to visit in the world, or even Guatemala, but as the economic, political, and communications hub of the nation, it was important that we paid it a visit to better understand the country and its people. The city is made up of 25 zones, each with its own streets and avenues. Zone 1 is a historical district in the location of the Central Plaza, National Palace, National Cathedral, and the city market. Many visitors leave Guatemala City out of their itinerary, but if you were to come to the city, try to at least visit this place. If you were to stay in the city, especially on arrival, Zone 10 is the place to be. It is a newer part of town with hip clubs and fine restaurants, and it's pretty safe even at night. We stayed at the Shamanek Hostel. At $15 per person per night, it may have been the cheapest place to stay in this overpriced part of town, but it was the most expensive for us on our trip. But then again, it was also the coziest, cleanest, and friendliest place we stayed. For many people, Tikal is a reason to come to Guatemala. With its mysteriously ornate stelae and tall, steep pyramids covered in overgrown jungle wildness, it's no wonder Hollywood has been fascinated with this lost city for years. As for me, that's why I knew I couldn't miss this place. The Mayans were never a unified civilization, but instead consisted of many independent kingdoms. They were unified by culture, technology, language, and art. Although the ancient city-state of Tikal had existed since 400 BC, it did not reach its peak until 200 AD when it flourished as a dominant economic, political, and military hub of the Mayan world for the next few centuries. For unknown reasons, the city was eventually abandoned by the end of the 10th century, while its neighbors on the Yucatan continued to flourish until the Spanish conquest in the 1500s. In Mayan architecture, places of importance are expressed by their heights, and the entire city of Tikal is no exception. The main areas are built on top of a hill, and on top of that, the 5 most important temples all rise above the canopy of the forest below. Climbing the pyramids is the coolest thing to do here. The actual steps on the pyramids are too large and steep to climb safely, not just for ancient Mayans, but for people today. After a few visitors tumbled to their deaths a couple of decades ago, alternative stairs were built on the side of the temples to reach the top. Temple 5 is the scariest one to climb, as even the modern stairs are as steep as ladders, and there's no looking down for all 59 meters on the way to the top. But once you get there, the view is amazing. Tikal is home to an abundant and diverse flora and fauna. For us, we spotted an agouti, bats, spider monkeys, ocellated turkeys, and lots of tarantulas everywhere. As the national park is located 9 hours away from Guatemala City, we left on the Fuente del Norte overnight bus at night and arrived first thing in the morning to Flores, where we transferred onto a minivan to the park an hour away. The round-trip bus ride costs about $40 per person, and the entrance fee into the park is $3 for locals, but $16 for foreigners. Well, whatever helps the Guatemalan economy. We next headed off to the historic city of Antigua, 45 minutes outside of Guatemala City. Once the capital of Guatemala until an earthquake leveled much of the city in 1773, Antigua today is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, preserving some of the finest colonial architecture in Central America. The town nestles among a ring of volcanoes, and Baroque ruins, monuments, convents, and plazas embed the fabric of quaint, grid-lined streets. Foreigners are everywhere in sight, and we blend right in. Most people come to backpack or to study Spanish or Mayan at one of its many language schools. It is debatable whether or not the tourism market is good for Antigua. On the one hand, it is boosting the economy, and the locals are going all out to take advantage of this opportunity. Travel agencies, fine dining, and cafes catering to foreign customers are everywhere. On the other hand, Antigua may lose its traditional way of life, social dynamics, and local charm. Ironically, tourists like us are destroying what we want to see, what we call the real Guatemala. But for a city that is so inundated with travelers, I was happy to see that Antigua has still maintained much of its local character, with Mayan women carrying baskets of goods on their heads to the market, with little children in slings made of homemade fabric. Many businesses still cater to locals, and vendors sell tortillas and atole on the street. I did not notice any Holiday Inns, McDonald's, or souvenir shops selling cheap keychains or magnets, at least not in the main parts of Antigua. Much of the accommodations and restaurants are still privately owned, and souvenirs are handmade by locals rather than mass-produced from China. We stayed in the most colorful hostel in town, Umaguma. Although the common areas and bathrooms could use a little more thorough cleaning, its lively, social environment where travelers from all over meet makes the stay here also worthwhile and memorable. The view from the roof garden is awesome, and with a price tag of $5 per person per night, that's hard to beat. The next morning we rode 45 minutes into a small village, where we were greeted by chickens on the road, kids renting hiking sticks, and people on horses offering rides for a few quetzales. It was shocking how just up the slope from where these villages lived is one of Central America's most active volcanoes. We were at the base of Volcan Pacaya, continuously erupting since 1965. It's the most popular volcano to climb, since it's relatively easy and safe, with set trails and taking only 2 hours to the top. Still, the hike requires some physical fitness, and by the time we got to the top, I was ready for a drink. The hardest part of the hike was on the top of the volcano, where trees disappear and the ground turns into nothing but black dust and sharp rocks. Each step that we took, we slid a half step back, and the amount of dust we breathed in was worse than secondhand smoking. We made it to a world like no other, lifeless, hot, with lava glowing from a dark, violent landscape. How can a place so hellish have a view so heavenly? Two and a half hours of winding mountain roads lead us to Panajachel, locally known as Pana, on the shores of Lake Atitlan. The lake is the deepest in Central America and is formed out of a crater of an ancient volcano. Pana feels like a beach town, with outdoor restaurants by the water, a nice breeze from the lake, and docks where lancheros are ready to take visitors on a cruise around the lake. Locals come to Pana from the lakeside villages on the public ferries, as it connects the communities to the rest of Guatemala. We took a private lancha to the neighboring villages of Santa Catarina Palopo and San Antonio Palopo. It seems as if not as many tourists come here. At the sight of foreign visitors, cute little girls rush to us to sell us their beautiful handmade scarves and bracelets, proudly presenting them as their own trabajo. Some of the kids were selling for their mothers, who were weaving intricate textiles directly on the street. The adults understand it when you say, "No gracias," but the little girls were more desperate and followed us wherever we went, trying to get as much sale as they can. I can understand seeing their poverty that exists everywhere here. Their desperation makes me wonder if they are happy with their lives here, but the beauty of their work tells me otherwise. I look out over the lake. It was strange seeing houses made of minimal materials, overlooking some of the most majestic views I have ever seen. Ironically, only afforded by the richest if this were back home in the States. Do the Guatemalans know how beautiful their country is? And it made me wonder, do I know how beautiful my own home is? It made me appreciate what I had. Would I know otherwise?
Well, there's Jason.
On our last full day in Guatemala, we just could not miss a Sunday market at Chichicastenango, an hour north from Pana. 5 days out of the week, Chichi is just a sleepy old town, but on the nights before Thursdays and Sundays, farmers, craftsmen, and vendors with their families from around the region come to set up their goods in outdoor stalls, and overnight, Chichi bursts into the largest indigenous market in Guatemala, taking over the entire city and becoming one of the crowdedest, most lively places I've seen in my travels. The Mayan civilization did not perish, as the ruins of Tikal might suggest. Quite the opposite, it stayed strong and is now flourishing brighter than ever today, as we see in Chichi. With 40% of the population Mayan and most of the other 60% a mix of Mayan and Spanish, Guatemala is the most proportionally Mayan of all countries in the world. I was happy to hear Mayan children playing around with each other in their indigenous language, the same language their ancestors used to make advancements in astronomy and mathematics. And I was happy to see people keeping their traditions alive and a part of their daily lives. Mayan religion lives on in the form of a unique style of Roman Catholicism, found only here in the homeland of the Maya. From what I see here in Chichi, it is good to know that one of humanity's oldest and distinctive cultures will live on. Take an old American school bus, give it a flamboyant paint job and a cute name, then add a rack on top. On the inside, post devotional messages to Dios and crank up the mariachi music. Then, fill it with twice as many passengers than was meant to fit, and don't forget to drive faster, and voila! You got yourself an authentic Guatemalan chicken bus. And no trip to Guatemala is complete without riding on one. Just wait anywhere alongside the road, hold out your thumb, jump on, and get to wherever you need to be for dirt cheap. For our 3-hour ride back to Guate, it cost us $3 a person. Now that's efficient. Coming back to Guatemala City, we wondered how the mountainside villages we saw the other day, and the rising steel and glass skyscrapers and boutique malls that we now see before us, how can both of these be of the same country? Stark contrasts do exist in Guatemala, but the Guatemalans have learned to coexist as one people, as it was only little more than a decade ago that they gathered their differences and united to end the 36-year civil war that had pulled their country apart, taking along with it 200,000 lives. Today, the people seem good-hearted and society seems stable. The Guatemalans are proud of their nation, welcoming us to their beautiful country and calling themselves collectively Chapin. Guatemala is a land of paradoxes that will enchant me again when I hope to return later in the future.
It's a video, dude.
Oh.